because I think post-colonial studies went in this direction, a current emerged in post-colonial studies which was actually even worse than this. And that was the current of nativism. That was where people simply switched the valences, American good, Indian bad, and said, no, Indian good, American bad. And said that we have an old culture, and so we should now only eat, like Indian snacks and reject America. And this became quite a surprisingly to me, a very respectable tradition in post-colonial studies. And an Indian scholar by the name of Ashish Nandi, who some of you may know, wrote a book called The Intimate Enemy, became very influential and had very great sympathies with the far-right Hindu movement in India. His views are often taken up by them. In fact, it's so interesting that he's read for Intimate Enemy, but people don't read his writings on women. Where he essentially, in 1987, there was a young woman who was burnt to death, and he justified it on the grounds of tradition. He said that, Western families cannot critique this because they don't understand the kind of social context in which she was burnt to death. Or recently there was rapes, several rapes in Delhi, and he said, well, rapes don't happen in villages. They only happen in cities. It has to do with modernity. And in villages, which is insane because most rapes happen in villages. And he simply doesn't know, but he fantasizes about a great Indian culture. So it's interesting to me that I would argue that because post-coloniality didn't confront backwardness sufficiently, it ended up in all these holes. Where on the one side it went in and became basically like ad agencies for globalization, where you start valorizing hybridity, saying, look, it's a tandoori chicken burger. So it's great, or on the other side, it's terrible because you need to eat your own authentic food, which is an insane idea. And I'll just give you a little hint of the insanity of this idea, just on the level of food. This is an easy example to get. Indian food is only 500 years old, which to some of you may seem like a very long time. It's not a very long time for the length of what we know of as Indian history. If you eat a curry, the curry has at its base frequently the tomato. And the tomato comes after Columbus goes to the Americas. There's no tomatoes in India before the New World. Essentially, a lot of Indian food, I'm from Punjab in North India. Essentially, for Punjab, the staple food is cornbread. Makai roti, the bread of corn. There was no corn in Punjab before we got it from the Amerindians. And you go to Punjab and people say, this is our Punjab. Hello, inside the corn, the bread is America. But it's a different kind of America. Now, this is not an example of hybridity. It's simply an example of the reality of how complicated the world is. The example of hybridity is tandoori pizza. The fact that we are already deeply interconnected people is not an example of hybridity, because to my mind, the fact of deep connectedness is bananas. It's colonialism that's made it seem shoppy. In the ancient world, I don't think people would have been surprised to discover that the coins of Babylonia were discovered, were being used in India. Because that's just what they did. The Indian Ocean was a vibrant trading world. People traded languages. So when you go to Sri Lanka today, you will find people who dive for pearls, off the coast of Sri Lanka, and they are called the Moors. Like the Moors of Spain. They don't say to themselves, wow, we are cool. Because, how cool our history is. This is their history. They don't have to be happy about tandoori chicken pizza. Okay, or what is it? Kushari with, Coca-Cola juice. The coolness of hybridity actually is absurd because the banality of interconnectedness only seems special given colonialism. Is what I'm saying. So the critiques came, I think, in dangerous ways. One, I'm suggesting, maybe a little meanly, that a lot of hybridity language was like brand agency of globalization. It's kind of a mean thing to say, but there it is. I hope you'll argue with me. And then the second thing is that there was a deeply nativist strain saying our culture is all we need, which is equally bizarre. Because if you look at our culture, and let's say in India, so say for example for me, there's nobody from the Hindu right here, and normally they want to assassinate me, so I can run them down and say hi to them on the video. But what do they believe? They believe, we stand for this. You go back and read the writings of their founders, of their political movement. These guys were reading Hitler, they were reading what the Nazis were doing to the Jews, These guys were totally influenced by Nazism. Goldwalker says what the Germans did to the Jews, we should do to the Muslims over here. Now, how is that an ancient tradition unsullied by the outside world? So when you dig down to the nativists, you discover they have all kinds of connections. I know that there are nativists in this country who learned their nativism in Greeley, Colorado. They went far away to become nativists. They didn't learn it in, Upper Egypt. They had to go to America to discover that, well, I'm actually purely whatever. All the native visions of Lebanon is because of French archaeology. We are Phoenician. At AUP campus, there's a they discovered the body of a Phoenician and they have this crazy reconstruction of a Phoenician man and he looks basically European. This is weird. Like, how do they know what his skin color is? It's like the Jesus thing. How do you know what skin color Jesus had? Is it written somewhere in the Bible, a description? This is the color of his hair, he had wavy hair, look like, how do you know these things? Okay. So, to confront backwardness directly. In the 1970s, things looked really bad. And one of the reasons I wanted to write a history of the South is because I knew that things were not always so bad. And things have not always been bad. It's not like this part of the world is always bad. Now, I can tell you that this can lead you to a very nativist place. Because then you can say, we are the land of the pharaohs, and we are the African kings and queens, and we are the great Indus Valley civilization where you had for the first time toilets and sanitation. It can lead you to places that are insane. But it doesn't have to take you that far back. Because interestingly, I felt if we just went back 50 years, a different story emerges. So I was interested not in where that story 50 years before the 70s had failed, because I was coming to political age at its failure. But what was it like in its biography? What was it like in its life? Did it appear always to be failed, or did it have potential? Because the thing with human action around the world is not whether what you're doing is going to lead to success. That's not why one pursues something. One pursues something because you feel that it's the correct thing to do. You pursue it because you feel like it may succeed. Nobody is going to pursue a political project, for instance, if they feel it will fail. Because that's a waste of your life. You pursue a project because it will succeed. And I remember in the 1980s being told that the problem with political theories was that I was going to write the word on the whiteboard, but maybe you know this word. I don't know, someone who learned it. No, please don't worry. Please. But it's the word that used to get beaten on us in graduate school, and I got sick of it. It was the word teleology. From telos, meaning the end. And so the argument that many of my faculty members used to have was that you should not write a narrative which is teleological, which is driven by the end. Because there's no such thing, and narratives are fluid, and things, etc. And I thought, I agree with you when you write history, that if you have a teleological narrative, a narrative that leads to a certain end, then you don't see in the story things that could have happened. You don't write a story in such a way where there are things that fail, and things that get defeated, and only the winner's story gets told. I get that. On the other hand, it's very hard to live without being teleological. I believe certain things are possible. I believe justice is possible. I believe equality is possible. I don't just say that to myself ironically. I am fighting for justice, but I know it's not going to happen. So, I just enjoy fighting for justice. I actually believe that it's going to happen. I believe, like a lunatic, that we will live in an equal world. I don't have an idea of equality. It's going to happen. Otherwise, why do I waste my time? Otherwise, I should just go make a lot of money and buy a beautiful apartment overlooking the Nile and maybe a yacht, go around the Mediterranean like, the man who finances the institute in AUD where I do a lot of work, Isam Ferris, lives on a nice yacht, That's the life, people. You made a big mistake. This whole equality, justice thing, it's not going to happen because it's ideological thinking. So I understand that when you write a story, one doesn't want to write it driven by the end. If you write the story, say of, let's say, the story of Indian independence, the whole story shouldn't be written with 14th of August 1947 when the British flag comes down and the English flag or Indian flag goes up. It's absurd. Because anything could have happened through the hundreds of years of struggle. I get it. But you can't live like that. It's not a good ethic. And so, at the same time, as you should not write ideologically, you should not write assuming an end, you should not write about the people who are struggling assuming they have no end. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? The people who are actually living the history that the historian is writing are not post-structuralists. They actually believe that what they are struggling for is going to happen. So, I thought that, let me go back and see what is it that people actually believe they were struggling to win, and what was their project actually? Right? Without being cynical, let's try to uncover it. It was all in plain sight. This history is there all around us. But they are often country-based studies. There will be a nice history of Egypt that ends, in 1971 when you open the door and say, hello, foreign capital, welcome home. And, so there's that, national study. There's 100 books about India, about how India, tried to build its industry and then everything goes to, gets flushed out of oil. I mean, there are hundreds of books like this. But what I found really interesting is, and it said a lot about the nature of how scholarship develops, that there was no project, there was no real book that said this was a project. There were actually people who wanted to confront backwardness. And they understood backwardness not in this cosmopolitan way, hybridity, or in this nativist way. We are better than that. They understood that their backwardness was a product of colonialism. And they understood as early as the 1920s that if they simply took the world as it was, as it existed at the time, however much they struggled, they will continue to be poor. There is, I don't remember what story this is, but there is either a biblical story or a Greek myth about somebody who's in chains, and the more you struggle, the tighter it gets. Anybody know that story? I think it's like a Greek myth. The more you struggle, the tighter it gets. It's like an Israeli torture device. The more you struggle, the tighter it gets. It's what the Palestinians have to deal with. The more they fight, the tighter it gets. But that's what they understood by the 20s to be the nature of the world was. The more they struggled to develop, the worse the situation in the economies would get. Because the nature of accumulation from the West was organized in such a way that the more you produce, the more they get to sell. Because many of these countries didn't even process their raw materials, they simply shipped them out. So these people had a sophisticated understanding of the nature of backwardness. Because they understood that if you don't produce your own toothpaste, and you're even importing toothpaste into your society, every morning when you wake up and take that thing, it says made in England. What kind of people are we that we can't even make toothpaste? We used to have great monuments, therefore we have tourism. But we don't have great monuments now. The great monuments now, they are built in France. And at the time it would be a factory or something. So these people recognize that the source of backwardness was very deep in the nature, structure of the world as it existed. How in the world, if everything you need, every thought you have comes from elsewhere, how can it be, they thought, and they said this stuff openly, including in notice, where they wrote directly that how is it possible that I, and Jalal Ali Ahmed, the Iranian, wrote about this a lot, how is it possible that I, sitting in Tehran, know what the latest François Sagan novel is in Paris, but I don't know anything about literature in India, in Afghanistan, in Iraq. These are my neighbors. I don't even know if they read and write them. I don't even know if the Afghans have a poetry tradition, let alone, that they have written, I just don't know this stuff. How can it be? How can it be that I, living in Dakar, Senegal, need to fly Dakar, Paris, and then Paris, Algiers? Why can't I go from Dakar to Algiers without going through Europe? So they understood backwardness. They understood that if the sun is Europe and then America, and we all go around the sun, we will always feel secondary. And that feeling of secondariness isn't simply in thought. It's structured into everyday life. And the toothpaste example is for me everyday life. Because most of us, not everybody, most people struggle. Gratitude Spivak is the best line because she once said that the great thing about thinking is it's like brushing your teeth. You have to do it every day. You can't just think and then relax. It's a lot of things. Every day. So they understood backwardness. They didn't try to deny it. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that I think the theory that emerged from the 70s onward was a theory of denial. Of saying that, no, you were wrong about saying we're backward. We're actually not backward. We're actually cosmopolitan already, or we have a greater tradition than you. But what had to be confronted by these people in the 20s, 30s, 40s was the fact of that, which is why they had to build the big dam, because that was their monument. Which is why they had to do import substitution to make sure that we had a chemical industry that produced toothpaste. Which is why the cost borne by these societies was overwhelming. Because they were fighting against that, but I would argue not deeply enough. And I'll talk about that in a second. So, I hope the first thing is clear about the backwardness, that you can't deny the backwardness, you have to confront it. Now, the tragedy is because that attempt, what I call the Third World Project, failed, because it failed or was killed off in the 1970s. The horrible thing about being born in that period is, I came of political age when the great Third World Project was done. And so all I got to see driving around Delhi was roads named after all these people, including Nasser and whatever. I had to go across Nasser Road every day. And what did it mean then? When people didn't know who this was. It's so interesting. In 1983, when an online meeting was held in Delhi, I remember there were billboards, even in 83, saying, an online meeting, and then there would be the charter of the debt on the billboard. Now you think, my God, it's propaganda. On the other hand, it's a cultural thing. That we are having this huge meeting in Delhi, and every day in the news we're going to discuss what was discussed at the meeting. And I know that if you had to choose American TV or this, the American TV was more superficial and fun, but this was a kind of great pedagogical moment. That's why Castro, for instance, used to give 8-hour speeches, because he was a great teacher. All these leaders of those days, that's how they understood their role as pedagogues. Now, when an online meeting is held in a town, nobody knows it's happening. It's totally irrelevant to the everyday life of people. So, by the time they failed, we didn't have a memory of it. It so-called disappeared without a trace, which is very interesting, how quickly that whole thing disappeared. When it was so powerful in its heyday, it so remarkably disappeared.